July 22, 1991, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 11:30 p.m. A young man is running down the street in handcuffs, one cuff dangling free from his wrist. He's injured, he's terrified, and he's shouting for help. Within minutes, two patrol officers approach a plain-looking apartment building on North 25th Street, apartment 213. The door opens to reveal a quiet, polite man wearing glasses. He's calm. He apologizes for the disturbance. He even offers to get the key to the handcuffs. Inside, the apartment smells wrong. Heavy, chemical, sour. An overwhelming stench of decay hangs in the air, a stark contrast to the owner's composed demeanor. One officer glances around, his eyes drawn to a blue 57-gallon drum in the corner of the bedroom. Something is deeply, horrifically amiss. One officer opens the refrigerator. What he sees will stay with him for the rest of his life. By morning, the world will know the name Jeffrey Dahmer. But the question that will echo for decades is even more unsettling than the crimes themselves. How does a human being become a monster?
Evil Echo.
Before we continue, a necessary word. This story involves violent crime, psychological disturbance, and the suffering of real people. We will not glorify what happened or describe disturbing details for shock value. That serves no one, least of all the victims and their families. What we will do is examine the factors, personal, social, and systemic, that allowed these crimes to happen. We'll remember the names and humanity of those who were lost, and we'll ask difficult questions about how societies fail the vulnerable. This is not entertainment. This is a cautionary tale. If you need to step away at any time, please do. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer. Between 1978 and 1991, he took the lives of 17 young men and boys. Most were men of color. Many were from marginalized communities. All had hopes, families, futures. His crimes went far beyond simple acts of violence. They included calculated attempts to control his victims and disturbing treatment of their bodies afterward. They were so extreme that even experienced detectives struggled to process what they discovered. But here's what made Dahmer's case so unsettling to the public. He didn't look like a monster. He worked at a chocolate factory. He was quiet, polite to neighbors. He had a soft voice. People who knew him described him as odd, but not dangerous. One neighbor even called him a nice guy. That disconnect between the man people saw and the reality behind his door is what makes this story so deeply disturbing. Because if someone like Jeffrey Dahmer can hide in plain sight, who else could? Jeffrey Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His parents, Lionel and Joyce, appeared to be an ordinary middle-class couple. But inside the home, tensions ran high. Joyce struggled with severe anxiety and depression. She was prescribed heavy medication during her pregnancy with Jeffrey. Lionel, a chemist, buried himself in his work. The marriage was tense, volatile. Young Jeffrey often listened to his parents shouting through the walls of their suburban home. As a young child, Jeffrey was described as energetic, even cheerful. But around age 6, something shifted. After a medical procedure for a double hernia, he became withdrawn, quiet. He stopped smiling as much. By his teenage years, the cracks were widening. He developed an unusual fascination with dead animals, collecting roadkill and examining them in the woods behind his house. He said he was curious about how things worked inside. His father, a scientist, thought it might be intellectual curiosity, but this wasn't the curiosity of a future biologist. It hinted at something darker, a need to control things completely, especially things that couldn't leave. Jeffrey struggled to connect with other kids. He felt invisible, different. He started drinking heavily to numb his emotions, sneaking alcohol into school in soda cans. By graduation, he was already dependent on it. And beneath it all, something else was growing. Fantasies about total control. Fantasies about keeping someone with him, forever. The monster wasn't born overnight. It was built, brick by brick, wound by wound, failure by failure. June 18th, 1978. Jeffrey Dahmer had just graduated high school. His parents' marriage had finally collapsed. His mother left, taking his younger brother with her. His father moved out. Jeffrey was alone in the house. That same day, he picked up a hitchhiker, Stephen Hicks, 19 years old, on his way to a concert. Dahmer invited him back to the house. They drank beer, talked. But when Hicks tried to leave, Dahmer panicked. He couldn't face being alone again. Hicks never made it to the concert. Stephen became his first victim. For 9 years, Dahmer did not kill again. He joined the army, was discharged because of his drinking, moved in with his grandmother in Wisconsin. He was arrested twice, once for indecent exposure, once for drugging and assaulting a teenager, but he served only limited jail time. The system viewed him as a problem to be managed, not a serious threat. Then, in 1987, the killing resumed, and this time, it didn't stop. He developed a method: meet young men at bars, bus stations, shopping malls, offer them money for photos or company, bring them back to his apartment, tamper with their drinks, and then he studied each crime and adjusted his behavior. He became more careful, more calculating. He began keeping trophies, photographs, personal items, and other reminders of the people he refused to let go of. By 1991, he was killing nearly once a week. To the outside world, Jeffrey Dahmer was unremarkable. His neighbors in the Oxford apartments knew him as the quiet guy in 213. A little strange, maybe. His apartment sometimes smelled bad, but he blamed it on spoiled food and plumbing problems. They accepted his explanations. Neighbor 1. He was polite, always said hello, kept to himself. Neighbor 2. I heard drilling sounds at night sometimes, thought he was just doing repairs. At work, the Ambrosia chocolate factory, he showed up, did his job, and mostly stayed in the background. But behind the door of apartment 213, reality was something else entirely. Investigators later found the apartment filled with evidence of his crimes: photographs, personal belongings, and containers of chemicals used to destroy or hide what he'd done. The refrigerator and other areas of the apartment held deeply disturbing remains. And Jeffrey Dahmer, the polite man with glasses, lived in the middle of it all, eating his meals, watching TV, going to work the next morning. The gap between who he appeared to be and who he truly was is almost impossible to comprehend. But that's how predators operate. They don't announce themselves. They blend in. Jeffrey Dahmer should have been stopped earlier. There were warnings, red flags, missed chances. In 1988, he was convicted of sexually assaulting a 13-year-old boy, the younger brother of one of his future victims. He served 10 months of a 1-year sentence and was released. In May 1991, one of his victims, 14-year-old Conorak Synthosamphone, managed to escape apartment 213. 2 young women found him on the street, disoriented and in obvious distress. They called 911. Police arrived, so did Dahmer, calm, persuasive. He told officers that Conorak was his 19-year-old boyfriend, that they'd had an argument, that everything was under control. The officers believed him. They escorted the boy back to Dahmer's apartment. Conorak Synthosamphone did not survive the night. Why did the police believe Dahmer? Many point to systemic prejudice. Conorak was Laotian. The situation involved a same-sex relationship. The neighborhood was predominantly black and economically marginalized. Officers later joked about the incident over the radio. One was even named Officer of the Year months later. The system didn't just fail Conorak, it failed every victim who might have been saved after him. When society refuses to see certain people as fully human, predators move freely among us. July 22, 1991. Tracy Edwards, 32, accepted an offer from Jeffrey Dahmer, money in exchange for posing for photographs. Once inside apartment 213, the door locked behind him. Dahmer's behavior changed. He became agitated, threatening. He tried to put Edwards in handcuffs and pressed a knife against his chest, but Edwards fought back. He struck Dahmer, escaped, and ran, bursting out the door with one handcuff still dangling from his wrist. He flagged down a police car. Officers Robert Roth and Rolf Mueller followed him back to the building. When Dahmer answered the door, he was composed, apologetic. He tried to explain everything away, but the officers decided to look around. One officer opened a drawer. Inside, Polaroids, dozens of them. Images of victims in staged and disturbing positions. Another officer checked the refrigerator. The room fell silent. Then one officer quietly spoke into his radio. "Get me back up, now." Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested on the spot. Within hours, investigators began documenting what they had found inside apartment 213, remains of multiple victims, chemicals, tools, and photographs. It took days to process the scene. Some detectives later needed counseling to cope with what they had seen. The trial of Jeffrey Dahmer began in January 1992. The world watched. He pleaded guilty but insane, claiming his impulses overpowered his ability to control himself. The prosecution disagreed. His actions were too organized, too deliberate. He knew what he was doing. He just chose to do it anyway. In court, Dahmer was eerily calm. He rarely showed emotion. At one point he said, "I carried it too far, that's for sure." The families of the victims sat in the gallery. Some wept, others stared in disbelief. Rita Isbell, sister of victim Errol Lindsay, delivered a powerful victim impact statement, her grief spilling over as she confronted Dahmer. The jury found him sane, guilty. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, 957 years in prison. But the trial wasn't just about Dahmer. It became a media event. His name spread across headlines. His face appeared on magazine covers. Some outlets treated the case like sensational true crime. Lost in the noise were the victims, their names, their stories, and the future they never got to reach. We must ask ourselves, when we consume stories like this, who are we truly remembering, and why? What was Jeffrey Dahmer thinking? Psychiatrists, FBI profilers, and journalists all tried to answer that question. Dahmer himself gave interviews from prison. He was surprisingly open, but his answers often raised more questions than they solved. He described feeling empty. He said he wanted to create people who wouldn't leave him, who would stay under his control. He experimented with horrifying methods to try to keep his victims alive but completely compliant. None of it worked. Dahmer wasn't driven simply by a desire to cause pain. What he craved was possession, control, the idea that another person could belong entirely to him. He couldn't form healthy, genuine connections, so he tried to manufacture them through violence and death. Psychologists have debated his diagnosis: antisocial personality disorder, features of other personality disturbances, rare paraphilias. But labels only go so far. Here's what we do know. Dahmer was isolated, emotionally neglected, and never learned how to build healthy attachments. He retreated into his imagination. His dark fantasies slowly replaced reality. Alcohol dulled whatever guilt he might have felt, and no one who saw the warning signs managed to stop him. Understanding him doesn't mean excusing him. It means recognizing the danger signs, so we can intervene before the next person like him acts. On November 28, 1994, Jeffrey Dahmer was killed in prison by a fellow inmate. He was 34 years old. Some called it justice. Others saw it as an escape from a lifetime of confronting what he had done. But his death didn't end the story. The Dahmer case forced changes. Police training began to improve. Missing persons reports, especially those involving marginalized communities, started to receive more serious attention. Conversations about systemic racism, homophobia, and how they allow predators to operate became harder to ignore. His case also sparked debates about mental health, childhood trauma, and whether people with such extreme tendencies can ever be helped, or if they are beyond the reach of treatment. Books were written, documentaries produced. Decades later, a streaming series reignited public fascination and reopened wounds for victims' families. The legacy of Jeffrey Dahmer is complicated. He forced society to look at painful truths we'd rather keep hidden. But we must face them, because refusing to look only makes it easier for history to repeat itself. Let's end where we should have begun. Stephen Hicks, Stephen Tuomi, Jamie Dockstader, Richard Guerrero, Anthony Sears, Raymond Smith, Edward Smith, Ernest Miller, David Thomas, Curtis Straughter, Errol Lindsay, Tony Hughes, Konarak Synthesomphone, Matt Turner, Jeremiah Weinberger, Oliver Lacey, Joseph Braidhoft. 17 names, 17 people, sons, brothers, friends, human beings with dreams, laughter, and futures taken from them. Jeffrey Dahmer is not the story, they are. The monster within wasn't supernatural. It wasn't destiny. It was a combination of untreated trauma, societal neglect, systemic prejudice, and individual choice. It was, in many ways, preventable. We cannot bring back the lives lost, but we can honor them by learning, by listening, by taking warning signs seriously, by protecting the vulnerable instead of ignoring them. Because the real horror isn't that monsters exist. It's that we sometimes choose not to see them until it's too late.